least twice Steve's lied today, once about Natalie and the second time about me. But no, very, very pleased to have joined the Landcat last year. Finding out about the advice firms was one of the ways that I sort of come across the Landcat in the first place. Earlier in the summer, though, we held a special event. It was the first time that we've held this event, and it was our AdviceTech Catwalk. And that was back in London. And yeah, I know we're going to talk about London. This is the home game. It feels like an away game for me because I'm one of the southern cats. But as part of the prize, the winner of the tech demo got a pack of Rolos. What more could you want, right? There's no better prize. Second best thing was they got to appear here at our home game session. Without the red lights, without the drama of the music, without the inquisitors. So before we get into our panel debate, I'm going to hand over to Joseph Williams from ZeroKey. I think you've got 10 minutes this time. This is a luxury, and I promise I'm not going to suddenly have the dramatic music come on for you. Do you need
No.
a clicker?
All good.
Over you go.
Thank you, Katey. And thank you, Landcat, for inviting us here today. A lack of integration between technology has been a major pain point for way too long. Here's what we at ZeroKey, or the initial steps that we're doing to try and resolve it. And there we go. Perfect. Now this is what you'll see when you eventually log into ZeroKey. Notice in the middle of the screen it says 0 seconds have yet to be saved. But what I want to initially draw your attention to is the top right-hand side, because what we've built as part of our MVP is a web extension. Now, the reason we built the web extension is because we want to place client data at your fingertips. We want you to have easy access to your client's data regardless of what web page you are working on. So the first step in the process is to set up an integration. We need a source of information now to populate the sidebar. Now, we have an integration with IntelliFlow. We've just built one with Xplan, and we're in the process with Curo as we speak. For this demo, we're going to choose IntelliFlow, and we're going to integrate with them. It's really easy. A couple of clicks, and you're already integrated. And now, as soon as we land back on the page, the integration is now activated. What this means now is the next time you click the web extension, IntelliFlow will be there as an option for you to select. Now, as soon as we select IntelliFlow, we'll be able to search for the clients that you have stored within your IntelliFlow account. In this case, we're going to search for example client. Now, as soon as we search for and then select the example client, what's going to happen is that ZeroKey is going to pull all of the information that you have stored for that particular client and present it for you to view. Now, this is everything. Now, as soon as we select it, now this is everything from basic client details through to any plans that may have, basically fact-find information. Now, what this means is that you now have really easy access to your client's data. So for example, if you need to find an email address, for example, you can simply open the extension, find contacts, and there's the email address there right for you. It's important to note that we do not store any client information. We just simply pull it in from the source, IntelliFlow, present it, and then enable you to move it to a new destination. Now that destination could arguably be anywhere, because the extension can open on any web page. But for example, if we just head to Aviva, for example, you'll land on this page, and there's a form to complete. Now, every time you land on this page, you're going to have to manually key in their name, their surname, their date of birth, etc. We don't want you to do that, so essentially you can open up the web extension, you can find their details, and then within the basic details section, and then you can simply copy and paste across. Really easy, copy and paste across. It saves you 9 seconds or so. Not a huge time saving, but a time saving nonetheless. But more importantly, it's retain the data's integrity because you're copying it from what you have selected as your source of truth. But of course, there is an element of friction involved in this process. You copy and paste it. We want to remove, do our best to remove it for it to become as frictionless as possible. So what we've built is something called quick actions. Now, I'll show a few practical examples of what a quick action is. But if we jump into the integration section and then jump to the quick actions page, on here we'll list all of the quick actions that we've built. We've built 38 of them so far. We're building about 1 a day at the moment, just building them out. But we don't have integrations with any of these tech providers at the moment. But we are able to move data into CashCalc, Voyant, 7IM, Fidelity, Fintegrate, Fundment, Oxford Risk, Transact, Aviva, Timeline, Mabel Insights, M&G Wealth, and then Aberdein, finally. And we're able to move that in without the integrations being present. All we're doing is pulling the data in from IntelliFlow. Now, to start with, as the first example, we'll just jump into Voyant. And here, this is where you add your clients. Now, normally, what you have to do is click the Create Client button and then manually key this information here. We don't want you to do that, of course. And what you can do is open up the web extension and copy and paste across if you're able to do that. We want to go one step further, though, so what we've built is a quick action. Now, open up the web extension here, click the Quick Actions tab. It'll say one is available, and there we go. You can add the client as a client into Voyant. Now, what this does is, as soon as we select it, it pulls the necessary information from IntelliFlow and pushes that into Voyant. Again, we don't have an integration with Voyant, but it saved you 21 seconds in the process pushing the data in. Now, that client exists now within Voyant, and it saved you about 21 seconds there. Now, what you can do is that you can select the client and start building up their profile. So you can add in their incomes, their expenses, their investments, and so on. So you can open up the web extension, go to the Quick Actions tab, and in this example, we're going to just add a quick expense in. Specifically, we're going to add the motoring expense, and as soon as you click it, again, it's going to pull the information from IntelliFlow and push it into Voyant, saving you 10 seconds. Again, not a great time saving, but a time saving nonetheless. And there we go, the expense has been added. For the purpose of implementation, we're just going to jump quickly into 7IM. Now, at the top right-hand side, you'll notice a desktop notification appears. That means that ZeroKey has recognized the page you are on and says, hey, we can help. So you can open up the web extension there. Again, go to the Quick Actions tab, and then there'll be the option to populate this form. Now, try and keep an eye on both if you can, because as soon as we click the populate form, it's going to autofill, much like your iPhone does for your personal details, but this is for your client's details. So you can click that button there, and it'll populate the form on the left-hand side. And then you can continue on with the rest of the new client application process. Now, next, we're going to jump into Fintegrate for the purpose of research and analysis, just a bit of variation. So example client already exists within Fintegrate. You can open the client, and we're on the existing policy section. Again, desktop notification appears saying, hey, we can add the policies in for you if you wish. So you can open up the extension, go to the Quick Actions tab, and there'll be two available for you. There's an ISA from Transact and a SIP from Transact, just as an example. We're going to click the ISA, and now that's going to push the data in. Again, pulling it from IntelliFlow and pushing it into Fintegrate, saving you roughly, it'll come up now, it'll say when it's successful, saving you 14 seconds in the process. Now that's pulled through policy provider, policy type, policy number, etc. It's also pulled through the fund information, so you haven't had to rekey any of this. It's just pulled it in from IntelliFlow. Finally, what we're going to do is jump into Cash Calc. Now, if we go to the View Existing Client section. Now, example client already exists as a client within here, and there we go. The example client has a portal account. Save that thought for just a moment. But if we jump into example client, what we can do is start adding in the quick actions. We've built a ton into there, so you can open up the web extension, start adding in their investments, their pensions, their assets, and so on. But all of these quick actions that we've developed so far have all been about pulling information from IntelliFlow and pushing them into the destinations, whether that be 7IM or Voyant or Fintegrate, etc. But what we want to do is explore, okay, what if we reverse these quick actions? You know, we don't have an integration with Cash Calc, but what if we start reversing them? And where this could really be useful is with PDF documents, because most of the time with a PDF document, when you generate a PDF document, you have to download the document, save it to your files, and then re-upload it elsewhere, wherever that may be. Likewise with the Cash Calc example, now we're generating a forecast, we're generating a PDF forecast, and it's going to appear on screen in a moment. But what we want to do is, what we're able to do is lift that PDF. So you don't have to download it, you don't have to save it. You can, of course, if you wish, but if you want to, quick action available. What if we want to, we can lift that PDF from this page now and send it directly back into your back office system, in this case IntelliFlow. Or if you do use Cash Calc, example client has a portal account, we can just send it straight into their portal account at this moment here. So you don't have to download it, you don't have to re-upload it to send to the portal. You just click Upload PDF to Client Portal and it sends it straight in. It'll save you roughly 60 seconds in the process, is what we say. And there we go. The PDF has now been sent directly into the Client Portal account. Now, if we just jump back into Cash Calc and go to the Documents section, you'll see that the PDF document has been sent. And it's worth noting that all of these quick actions now are transferable. So if we add a new source of data like Xplan or whoever it may be, they're all transferable. Now, if we jump back into ZeroKey, you'll notice now there's a 3-minute time saving that we've done just during these 10-minute demonstration. Now, that 3 minutes, okay, in isolation is not a huge time saving, but if you start adding those minutes that you save and those seconds that you save up, after, if you add them all up after a month, after a week, a month, and a year for your advisors and power planners at your firm, it'll soon add up to be a considerable time saving. And finally, the last point is that throughout this entire demonstration, we've only ever had one tab open. We haven't had multiple tabs open or multiple screens to move data from A to B, and that's the purpose of ZeroKey. We want you to have really easy access to your client's information, regardless of what web page you are working on, and be able to move it from A to B with ease and without any manual data entry. A QR code and a link will appear for any feedback that you have. We will build based on demand, so if you send us some of your thoughts, if you'd be happy to do so, we'd really appreciate that, whether it be an integration, a source of data, or some quick actions, etc. There's a little reward at the end if you do submit. Registration is now open for you to use ZeroKey. And yes, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much. I think you told me that was 9 minutes and 59 seconds, but probably with a slight delay, we went to the 10 minutes exactly. And it just shows technology is great when it works, right? And a bit of a nightmare when it doesn't. But I will invite my panelists up now, please. So up you come, and we'll start talking a bit more about tech. If we can, there we go. Wiltshire. Lovely. So a bit like Tom this morning, their names are up there, but actually I'll ask them to introduce themselves. So if we start at the far end.
Alastair Conway, FNZ.
Lovely.
Yeah, Matt Wiltshire, ZeroKey.
Jennifer Paice of Aberdein, Considine, Wealth.
Max Anderson, Wealthspace.
Lovely. Great. Thank you very much. So tech, what is it and who is it good for? Who's it good for? So I've got a piece of tech, Alastair.
I've got the same piece of tech.
Any other advisors in the room with a remarkable? Usually every conference I go to, there's at least, there we go, some at the back there. It's a simple bit of kit. It's actually effectively a notepad, isn't it?
It is a notepad.
After
all these years, we're
just writing stuff down, and we've reinvented
Brilliant.
A notepad and pen. But I feel like I can't live without it.
My favourite bit of tech, despite everything else.
My favourite bit of tech as well, actually. So I feel I can't do without it now, so hence I've got this, and then the iPad as well, separately. But it is that thing of trying to focus with this piece, isn't it, really, that you're taking down your notes and you're putting them down, which is why I can see why many advisors use them in their business, of different clients, different folders, anything like that. But we've heard a few from the different sizes of advice firms, and there was a bit of a debate as to whether technology is for the big players or whether it's for the smaller ones, because they can be a little bit more nimble. And we've got a couple of advisor perspectives on here as well, in terms of then you've had those pain points and you've decided to build your own technology. So shall we start with you in terms of, what is it? You've got like those two hats then that you wear, one as an advisor and one as a actual fintech person.
Sure, absolutely. So I suppose there's a bit of context then. So I'm financial advisor first, and then Wealthspace second. So Wealthspace was born out of pain that I was experiencing as a financial advisor in our financial advice business. The question as to why we built it. So back end of last year, we were putting together our big, hairy, audacious goals, our BHAGs. That's a Brett Davidsonism, if any other advisors use FP Advanced in the room. And at the same time, sitting in various CPD events, hearing about the sort of coming AI apocalypse, and consumer duty, of course. And so back end of last year, I thought, well, there must be something that we can do here. It's either build or buy. And so I had a look to see, is there anything that we could buy? And at the time, there wasn't, although helpfully from Ed this morning, there's apparently now 50 plus of them, so cheers, Ed. But so we decided to build. At the time, it was just for our advice firm. Turned out there was something in it, so now it's its own company. I suppose I've alluded to, plenty of people had the same good idea, so why have I continued with it? Well, firstly, approach to data. As a smaller advice firm, am I comfortable putting client data, firm data, into a system that is then sending the data across to AI? Point one. And point two is this thing about technology is going to reach the big players first. How do we help the smaller firms stay competitive and trying to do that? So hopefully that answers your question.
Lovely. Matt, should we ask you the same thing then as to what are these pain points? Obviously, we've just seen the demo from ZeroKey. the 10 minutes exactly.
So I suppose I also come from a similar background, so I am a chartered financial advisor first. That is my, that is my sort of base case, but I was fortunate enough to be one of the founders of CashCalc. So ZeroKey is actually my second bite of the tech cherry. But CashCalc was very much built in the sense that we wanted inputs of a pre-existing product and outputs of another pre-existing product. And ultimately it was that that was the reason we built that, was because we went out to the market, looked at what was on offer, and what we wanted didn't exist. And I think we just decided actually that we would give it a spin. It turned out to be worked out okay. We were fortunate that we sold it into FE Fund Info in 2021. And I suppose going back to the big versus small thing, interestingly and slightly controversially, the second that we were bought by FE Fund Info, we were stuck in treacle as a development team, and for all the things that you're meant to gain from going into a big environment with 150 developers, and this actually was a lack of agility. Ultimately, Joe and I and a number of others have subsequently sort of peeled off from the CashCalc family, still running an IFA firm, still have pain points in that, one of which is lack of integration between systems. And I mean that in the sense of, we talk about integrated tech stacks, but I like using best-of-breed products. I like using things that have come to the market that are really innovative. And one of the challenges that we saw in every single one of those was that every entrant to the market had to do the same thing over and over again. What was that? Make 20 to 40 to 50 point-to-point integrations. It's the same challenge, and they have to build the same thing over and over again, and every person that comes to the market has to do the same thing to compete. I wanted to try and shake that up and allow the innovators, the best of breed products that come to the market, rather than build 40, 50 point-to-point integrations, build one and ultimately do it. So I'm trying to champion the small innovators, and ultimately that, if I look at that with my IFA hat on, it's a case of how can I compete with an integrated tech stack? Well, I'll integrate the best of breed tech stack based on the things that suit my business, the products that suit my business, rather than having to buy an all-encompassing one product from one provider.
Jen, that point of integration is a really important one, I think, really, but also that vast choice of technology that's out there. I think even just as a normal standard person, not necessarily even an advice firm, there's an overwhelming amount of technology, and the pace of change is probably faster than ever before. We always sort of talk about it. Technology's coming down the line, it's so quick. But I think it really does feel like that at the moment. How does an advice firm decide what bits of kit it's using, and then the problems that exist when they don't talk to each other?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here and thinking maybe I should be a tech entrepreneur and start my own tech, because it seems to be the way that we're trying to solve things. I think as a firm with 17 advisors and of all age demographics, it's a real challenge in terms of trying to be client-centric and work out what is the best service that you can provide to your clients while trying to make things internally linked to FCA requirements, consumer duty, the requirements of the individual as an advisor, and be able to pay for it.
Yeah.
And the technology that's out there, I literally could spend all my time looking at technology, but it's constantly thinking, well, does that one work with that? And you do want best of breed, so you don't want one big, massive system. But I've got an advisor here who could send me an email every day of new technology that he would want, and my profit margin is going to continue to keep going down. So I think for firms, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a small firm. We have 17 advisors, 35 people in our business, so we're not small. But that doesn't mean that we have cost challenges, and we really have. I don't want to put technology into the firm just because that's what everyone else is doing. I do want best of breed. I do want to be at the forefront of it. But I need to also be mindful of how we run the business and make sure that all our advisors are on that journey, all of our staff are on that journey. So for me, it's a challenge daily, because we're trying to compete, we're trying to be innovative, we're trying to do what's right for clients. But I think technology really has a place, but it's constant. And when you look at AI, is AI going to benefit us as a business? Is it going to benefit the client ultimately? Because while we're still looking at the kind of advice gap and looking at the older generations still have the majority of wealth out there, then will AI work for them? And we actually increasing the kind of advice gap. So there's constant dilemmas in terms of cash to be able to pay for these things because they're expensive, and you just don't know which one's the best one. So we're talking about the other sessions about whether you should be a bigger firm or you be consolidated or have smaller firms. I love our size, and I want to continue that. But I want to be able to be competitive, and that's the balance, and that's where it's really difficult. And finally, just my only point is everything just ZeroKey is amazing, but it's a shame that we've had to get to that point.
Yeah.
Because why are we not trying to, as a sector, try and be together and more, we need providers being on top of it. We need FCA to be actually understanding how technology is going to change things. And for some providers, I'm not saying anyone in this room, still asking for paper copies.
Yeah.
And the FCA wanting paper copies. And none of it all matches up. And that's where it gets difficult.
We talk a good game sometimes on technology, and we're still actually physically using paper rather than a remarkable.
Yeah.
Alastair, in terms of you can offer different perspectives, obviously with FNZ, but in previous lives as well. Do advisors have to be experts in technology as well now, as having the advisor hat on and every other part of the business that they've got to run?
So I was really struck by Joe and Ben, actually, because I remember being those two about a long time ago. And the complexity for me was whether I used an Excel spreadsheet or I actually sort of wrote it down. It really was that simple. And again, what's really come out of today is the generation coming through into the advice market today is grappling with those two at the same time. I was also struck by Jen's comment, which is you've got a different problem, which is a larger firm. You've got to start managing that business a different way. So if there's one or two of you, you can be much more entrepreneurial, much more fast-moving. You can make decisions and only affect yourself. Larger firms then have to start thinking about how they manage that. You've got 17 different opinions, etc. So I think, you can really see how the industry, if you like, the new wave is coming in and changing it. I would say most of what we're seeing in the market is still into the older clients, larger firms who are grappling often with consolidation. You were referencing that in your talk earlier, firms that consolidated coming together. I think they have a different challenge for technology from some of the innovators coming through in the room today. So I think they have got to deal with large firms. They're thinking about their compliance risk. Everybody is, but they've got to do it at scale, etc. So I think the answer to the technology point is it's different for every firm. Ultimately, though, everybody will share the same point, which comes back to that all of this is an end investor, a client, sitting down with an advisor of some sort, sometimes doing some direct activity on a website, and solving the problems they've got, which was referred to earlier, which all you're trying to solve now. And as long as the technology is helping that process and making that more cost-effective, easier for the client to understand, easier to go on that journey, it's a cause of good. If actually the technology is becoming a distraction to that, then actually I don't think it's adding any value.
The client part's a very interesting one. We've said, who is the technology good for? So obviously it's great that it's supporting advice firms and maybe helping them be more efficient. Hopefully they can serve more clients in that way, go some way to closing that advice gap that we all talk about as well. But is any of this of use to the clients as well?
Sure. So good question. My sort of starting point is that financial advisors are good. They're nailing it. They're doing what clients need. So what I'm trying to achieve is to give financial advisors more time to do that. And they can either use that time to service more clients and give the value advice out to more individuals, therefore we have a good client outcome. Or if they were so minded, they could use that additional time to perhaps address their fees, maybe offer a slightly lower cost, although fee pressure isn't necessarily a good thing, therefore a good client outcome. So my sort of stance on it is advisors are good and they're doing well, and value advice, so the much quoted ILS study that was commissioned by Royal London that says the value advice is £48,000 per client. It's been trawled through, it's not disputed. What advisors aren't brilliant at necessarily is illustrating that value advice to clients. I think some of it sort of goes under the carpet. So I think advisors are giving value to clients. It's good. The tech that I'm trying to provide is to allow clients to do more of it. So through that mechanism, better client outcomes.
What's your thoughts on it, Jen? And are clients sort of obviously using technology as well? Is that making them more informed when they're coming to meetings with advisors?
I think maybe I'm a bit more controversial is whether it actually does impact the client in terms of when you're trying to run the business and you are having to think about all the other bringing in all the technology, is balancing it with actually cost to serve. Is it costing the client more? And the amount of technology that's coming out there in terms of their platform charges, their investment charges, our charges, and then we need to look at actually running the business. There's a point where it's actually, is it going to cost the client more? And that's what I'm worried about in terms of actually, we want to deliver better, but we also want to deliver to more people. So therefore, you need the technology. So there, it's a really fine balance of whether we're going to get to the point where all of this technology is actually going to make it cheaper for the client.
So there's a lot of talk of technology should be sort of reducing those costs, but actually there's a concern that it might be going the other way. What do you think, Matt?
I mean, so we're a fixed fee financial planning firm, so it is incumbent on me to be as efficient as possible if I want my business to be more profitable, for example. But my view on technology is that it should allow me more time to think, and therefore it's the thinking time you're paying for from a chartered financial planner that's why we're being paid. You can use an algorithm to do certain things. There's a lot of D2C products out there if you just want an accumulation product, for example. It's much the same as I feel with AI, for example, is I don't want AI to do the thinking for me. I want it to give me more time to think. And I think ultimately one of the examples that I would say is something like a client portal. Yes, I don't have any connection to CashGalc anymore, but what I do love still to this day is the onboarding portal. It's a digital portal that we send out in advance of this is how I would use it, but we send it out in advance of our first client meeting. The client rings in or they're referred in. The first thing we say to them is, look, before our first meeting, can you do some work for me, which is, can you complete this digital fact find for me? Now, the reason we do that, not only does it mean that the first hour of our meeting is not me writing down their date of birth or their national insurance number and putting bits and pieces together, it means that they've sat down for 20 minutes in advance of that meeting, for example, and they've thought about some of the things they want to talk about. But it also means that it's coming in advance of that meeting. So that hour that we have, that hour that they're really looking to pay for, is spent almost entirely on the soft detail of our planning. It's we already know what some of their considerations might be. We've already had the opportunity to think of what some of the, what's not been said in the fact find. We can probe a little bit more. So my view is that it's about making sure that the time we're spending with clients, or the time we're spending on a client's case, is as efficient as possible, and we're using that time to, show off our expertise. We sit and we do all these exams, and we have all this knowledge and working knowledge in the background, but half of it is spent with just going, but hang on, is that actually what your pension is? Or where it's invested, for example. And you get into sort of minutes and even hours of pointless consideration that you could have done potentially outside of that time, or you could have asked that question as you get into the room. So,
Alastair, does it matter if the clients see the technology or not? I have to admit, in my former life at Money Marketing, when I started writing about platforms, I had no idea what it was, let alone the technology that sat behind them. But I soon got the impression, okay, well, it's to make the advisor's life easier, to make them look good in front of their clients as well. The client might not even know this language that we talk of platforms and other sort of tech that advice firms are using as well. Does it matter?
So there's often a debate around whether platforms or whether some of the technology we've been talking about makes the life easier of the guys up here or the people in the room. That's fine, right? Because my view is technology, certainly an FNZ view, is take friction out of the space, reduce costs, provides the ability then either to take that cost reduction to the client, or to allow the guys to devote more time because they've been smarter about how they use their time and therefore give a different sort of value to the clients. So I think as long as, and I think advisors are generally, from my experience, delivering extra value or cost reduction to clients to resolve the technology, the fact it goes in via the advisor is fine. Okay, and I think most advisors have taken technology and used it for the good of the end investor or the client they're serving, and that's where it should go. And as things evolve more, clients should be spending less time, to your point, filling in forms with you watching them for an hour, or doing things that are transactional. And the real value of the people in this room, and my experience when I used to advise, and Joe referenced it several times earlier, is the magic that occurs when somebody in this room sits down with an end investor and does what only they can do. So 90%, and this might be controversial, I think 90% of what this room does is broadly the same. It's the 10% difference that they all bring, and then streamline at the back is the way great firms are developed. And that can be done at scale, or it can be done in small firms. But that's what technology has enabled people to start doing properly.
Talking of the people in the room, any questions from the audience at this stage? Right, how many of you use a smartphone? Hands up. Right, so you all use technology to some extent, so start thinking of them. And those streaming, obviously this is brought to us by the power of technology as well, so get some questions on the go. Okay then, so it's not saving us as much time as we like in some regards. In some things it is. It's allowing us to free up for those sort of human interactions. How do small technology firms get in front of advisors to sort of show them their wares other than the AdviceTech Catwalk, obviously, of course, and events like this?
Oh yeah, $1 million question. I suppose events like this, CPD events, networking, just getting out there, getting your name known. Could I throw a grenade back into the audience, if I may?
Yeah.
So on the tech piece, if we could assume that there was a piece of tech out there for advisors, which did mean you could charge 35 bips rather than 75 bips, but you have exactly the same profit margins, who would do it?
Few hands have shot up.
And the rest would so therefore that's a better client outcome, right?
Oh, does someone want to come with a comment there? We've got a hand
again,
up
please.
there.
Okay, yeah, obviously on the face of it, nominally it's cheaper, yeah, but
Sure.
That's not talking about any of the functionality or procedural time or efficiencies or even the if you went for a cheaper system, it doesn't necessarily mean it might have downtime issues, lack of integration with other systems. So you can't just look at a system on price alone. Wouldn't work. But I get your point if that's what you're trying to make.
Yeah. So my point was about advisor fees. So
advice.
I follow you, right? We don't live in that world. Yeah. But if we lived in a world where, advisors could make the same profit margin thanks to tech on half the fees, the question was, who would do that? Because that's a better client outcome.
I'll throw the grenade back then. Rather than spend your time addressing inefficiencies in the most efficient part of the market that's doing the most work for clients and adding the most value, nice to see you, but can you go away and deal with the product providers who take 5 to 10 days to reply to a simple email, who will not process letters of authority, etc., who are working from home and working is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. And, do us a favour, once you've got them operating to the same standard as a corner shop, then come back and we can then work out what we're going to do with the time saved. But until then, anything we change in our business is a rounding error on a rounding error compared to the complete mess that product providers. I'd rather do without them. I could rather employ a drunk 16-year-old in my business anyway, because they would do less damage.
Sure.
Well, we've certainly got to the more spiky end of the day that we were hoping for. Do we risk technology sort of over-promising and under-delivering at times then? You said you've got advisors coming up to you sort of every day with they want to try this
Just
new
one, he's sitting right there. That was a really good point, because I think that's the elephant in the room, isn't it? I think as advisors, I'm going to get in trouble as well because it's planning and planners, is that we're at the coalface all the time, and we're the lowest valued denominator when it comes to value of your business. But we're the ones that are constantly attacked by the FCA, are at the coalface of speaking to our clients all the time. And we can engage with all the great entrepreneurs in the tech, but we still need to make a profit as a business. Which then doesn't actually have that as good an outcome if we sell the business compared to a provider or an investment manager. So it's grating, But it also then, you're only limited by how much you can actually put into your own company because of the bigger ecosystem of the FCA and everyone that we rely on. And we feel like, I think a lot of us feel like we don't have a voice because it doesn't change. You know, someone said on stage, 10 years ago we were talking about POAs and how that was going to, we were going to make that all much easier. And we're still waiting. And clients are saying, why is it taking so long? And we can have all the AI and everything in place and do our bit quicker, but why should it be down to us to do the quickest bit?
Can I just pick up on the gentleman's question? To be fair on, and obviously at FNZ we deal with some of the providers that you can see on the board there. I do know how much money they're putting in to try and solve the problem you've talked about. So I do think, as much as we've heard a lot of the innovation, if I look at somebody slightly near my age group in terms of being in this industry a long time, I see massive progress in that. Now, I don't think they're there yet, but do I think they're investing a lot of money and trying to make that better, be it through our platforms or other methods of communication? Absolutely they are. They need to keep on working at it for the reasons you've given, but there is no question in my mind that part, because I do think if you don't solve that legacy of data and information, for as much as you put a veneer on the front of it, you do have an underlying problem. But I think a lot of them are doing an awful lot of work and spending an awful lot of money because they recognise that's the major inhibitor to them getting more business. So they're motivated, but they are working on it, and I know that for a fact.
They're equally motivated to do the exact opposite, though.
They are. Well, okay, I have a different view.
I think we can sit and there are some great new and innovative tools. You guys are a technology provider that are hopefully making that the correct, but these providers are completely, they've taken things like consumer duty and used it to hit us over the head with, because ultimately they've said, well, we don't have, they don't reply as quickly as they used to. They've forced things into paper, whereas we want it digitally, for example. So we're definitely into territory where there is a conflict in that sense. And yes, we talk, we're all about managing conflicts in our businesses. That's fundamentally one of the biggest conflicts, is that they get, as they sit and keep that money, it's another few days that they've got hold of it rather than one of the new incumbents. There's some great other businesses in this room who are doing some amazing things in platform spaces, for example.
So you should keep challenging and keep kicking them, and they'll keep working and make it better. And I think those two will come together.
There we go. So we don't always have to agree. That's absolutely fine, but we'll keep it. And the technology is flashing at us.
You said you wanted spiky. The two of us said we'd come up and be spiky.
Well, exactly. Thanks for encouraging that for my session, everyone. But that's brilliant. Thank you very much to our panelists.